Quick note before we dive in. I'm running a free 5-day Doodle Parent Challenge starting April 20th. 5 short lessons specifically designed for how doodle brains work. 5 to 10 minutes a day, completely free. No credit card, no catch. Just come train with me. Grab your spot at thedoodlepro.com/challenge. Okay, let's get into today's episode. You've ever Googled doodle trainer or doodle groomer and ended up in a comment section that made you feel embarrassed for having your dog? This episode's for you. If you've ever been in a Facebook group, maybe one of the ones with names like, "Why are doodle people like this?" and walked away feeling judged for a choice you made with real love and real reasons, this episode is for you. If a trainer or vet tech or stranger at the dog park has ever said something that made you wonder if you made the wrong call, this episode is for you. Because today I want to actually talk about the criticism, not to get defensive, not to argue, but because there is something really important buried inside of it, something that explains exactly why your doodle is the way that they are. And why so many doodle parents feel like they're failing when they're absolutely not. I'm Corinne Gearhart, certified dog trainer, doodle specialist, and author of Your Doodle's Daily Schedule Blueprint. Welcome to the Doodle Pro Podcast. By the end of this episode, you're going to understand your dog in a way the critics simply don't. And I say that not because I'm dismissing the critics, but because I've spent years on both sides of this conversation. And I have something most of the people in those comment threads don't have. Receipts. I want to tell you a little bit about how I got here because it matters for this conversation. I worked in pet care for years, dog walking, pet sitting, and I started hearing something over and over from my clients with doodles. Not frustration with their dogs, frustration with how the industry was treating them. Trainers who rolled their eyes, pet professionals who made offhand comments, a sense that choosing a doodle was somehow naive or trendy or less than. And the families who I worked with, they were not naive. They were people with real allergies or kids or living situations where a lower shedding dog was genuinely the right answer. They had done their research. They loved their dogs deeply, and they were being made to feel like they didn't deserve to be taken seriously. I have allergies myself. That was part of my own story too. The idea that you need to choose between a dog you can live with physically and a dog who gets real, serious, science-based training support, that gap makes no sense to me. And nobody was bridging it. So that became the work. Bridging the doodle divide, building the thing that I kept wishing existed for the families I was working with. And I want to tell you about my last dog before Nestle, because she's the reason I can stand in the middle of this conversation and say what I'm about to say with complete confidence. Her name was Hershey. She was a standard poodle, and she was magnificent. I went full frou-frou. Bracelets on her legs, pom-pom tail. She would walk into a room of fluffy doodles, and she was absolutely the most extra dog there. I loved her for it. I am a boy mom, and I leaned into all of the pretty things, bows, yes, even nail polish on my Hershey. She wasn't a doodle, and I didn't want her to look like one. So when someone says you could just breed poodles, or why didn't you get a poodle? I hear that. I have loved a poodle. I know what that dog is. I know that intelligence, that sensitivity, that extraordinary need to be in partnership with a human. I know that athleticism. I know it from years of living with it. And my current dog is an F1B Cavapoo. That means he's 3/4 poodle. He is not a poodle. He is something different, not a lesser version of Hershey, not a greater version, just something else entirely. And I love him for exactly that difference. It goes far beyond the haircut. Now, I promised you I was going to actually engage with the criticism. So let's do that. Some of it is legitimate. And I think it matters to say that out loud. There are breeders producing doodles carelessly, breeding for profit only or for a certain look without health testing, without understanding the temperament profiles they're combining, without any real thought for the families who are going to live with these dogs. That's real. And doodle parents deserve to know about it so they can make better choices. The Koch claims have some truth too. When you cross a curly-coated poodle with a straight-coated retriever, you get variation. Some doodles shed. Some coats are harder to maintain than families expected. The idea that no one can be allergic to a doodle isn't accurate. Any honest breeder would tell you that. And I say all of this because I want you to be the most informed doodle parent in the room. And that means the whole picture, not just the flattering parts. But here's where the criticism stops being right. And here's where it actually gets interesting. Okay, what is a breed actually? A breed is a group of dogs selectively bred over time for specific traits, physical characteristics, temperament, working ability. The critics are right that doodles don't have an AKC registry number. That's true. But intentional crosses between breeds have existed for centuries. The Labradoodle was developed in Australia in the 1980s, specifically as a guide dog for people with allergies. That was not an accident. That was a breeder looking at two different breed profiles and asking, what could these two dogs produce together that neither produces alone? And in the last decade, organizations like GANA, the Golden Doodle Association of North America, and WALA, the Worldwide Australian Labradoodle Association, have built health testing protocols that are genuinely rigorous. Hips, elbows, eyes, cardiac screening, DNA panels. I shared some of those results on my social media recently. I met with the board of GANA and the president and vice president of WALA a few weeks ago. We discussed the breed standards they had worked so hard to establish for their respective doodles. These leaders were remarkable. These are not people breeding carelessly. What they're doing is hard work and expensive. Being newer does not mean less intentional. And using the word mutt with disdain because this dog doesn't have a century-old registry number is not a scientific argument. It's a gatekeeping argument. Now, here's the part I find genuinely fascinating. And this is the part that critics have not thought all the way through. One of the most common things I see is this: a gamble with personality since you're crossing two different breeds. And my answer is, you're right. There is variation. But here's what that actually means. When you cross a poodle with a golden retriever or an Australian shepherd or Bernese mountain dog, you're combining two very specific cognitive and emotional profiles. Poodles are ranked amongst the most intelligent dog breeds in the world. They were bred to work, to problem solve, to be in constant communication with a human partner. That is not a personality quirk. That's centuries of selection for exactly those traits. Golden retrievers were bred for high engagement, high responsiveness, deep desire to connect. Australian shepherds for focus and handler sensitivity. Most of the breeds in doodle crosses share one thing. They were bred for partnership. I dive deeper into what I call this poodle operating system, combined with the different crosses in more depth in my book, Your Doodle's Daily Schedule Blueprint. So, what do you get when you combine high intelligence with high engagement and high sensitivity? You get a dog who is exquisitely tuned into their environment, a dog who notices everything, a dog who processes information and emotion constantly, a dog who needs emotional and physical engagement in a way that a lower drive breed simply does not. You get a dog who, without the right structure and training, can look chaotic, reactive, impossible to settle. Not because they're broken, but because they're operating exactly as designed, and nobody has given them the tools they need to regulate that beautiful brain. And here's the thing about my Cavapoo. 3/4 poodle, He has so much of that poodle intelligence, athleticism, that sensitivity, that need to be engaged. And he also has something Hershey and the other poodles I've worked with didn't have in the same way. A kind of warmth, social magnetism, a way of connecting with every person in the room. Not better, different. A different expression of some of the same extraordinary traits. His cavalier side was built to be on royalty's lap, and he sees me as his royalty and feels that's exactly where he belongs, which is so beautiful and prone to separation anxiety. But I cover that in my Cavapoo episode. The critics say that the variation in Doodles makes them unpredictable. But what they're actually describing is a dog who needs specific knowledge to live with well. And that specific knowledge is exactly what's been missing for so many families, especially when they're seeking training help and they get shut down or shamed for having chosen a doodle. When a doodle parent comes to me feeling like a failure, it's almost never because they did something wrong. It's because they were handed generic advice for a dog who needed something specific. The industry hasn't caught up. The resources haven't been there, and the comments sections sure aren't helping. When critics say doodles are a gamble, I hear them saying that more doodle families need exactly what we do here at the Doodle Pro. They're accidentally making the case for doodle-specific training. So, what does that specific knowledge look like? It starts with understanding that your doodle's drive, sensitivity, and intelligence are not problems to be managed. They're traits to be channeled. Science-based positive reinforcement is not the soft option. It's the most effective option for dogs who are this tuned in to human feedback and emotion. Aversive tools and punishment-based methods don't just fail with dogs like this. They actively damage the relationship that makes your doodle trainable in the first place. The relationship is the training. It means structure, a predictable daily rhythm where your doodle knows what to expect and what's expected of them. Not rigidity, structure. Because a dog who's constantly monitoring their environment for what comes next cannot relax. And a dog who can't relax can't learn. And it means emotional regulation, not just commands, the ability to move through a trigger, the doorbell, the squirrel, the leash coming off without losing their mind, and to come back down when they do. That's what's possible. I have seen it happen with hundreds of families, not because their dog was easy, because they finally had the right information for the specific dog they have. If this episode resonated with you, if you've ever felt dismissed for having a doodle, or wondered if the training approach everyone else uses isn't quite fitting your dog, I want to invite you into something. I'm running a free 5-day Doodle Parent Challenge starting April 20th. 5 days, completely free, and by the end, you'll have the foundation your doodle has been waiting for. The link to join is in the show notes or at thedoodlepro.com/challenge. I would love to see you there. Thank you so much for being here today. If this episode helped you feel a little more confident about your dog, or more confident in your choice of a doodle, or a little more ready for that next comment section, I would love if you shared it with another doodle parent who needs to hear it. And if you've been meaning to leave a review on your podcast player, it takes about 30 seconds and it helps so many more families find this show. Doodles are different, wonderfully so, and I look forward to seeing you next week. One last thing. The free Doodle Parent Challenge starts April 20th, and I would love for you to join us. 5 days, completely free, designed specifically for doodle parents. Everything you need is at thedoodlepro.com/challenge. See you there.